things. So my name is Matt Benson. I'm Group IT Manager at Cranswick PLC. We're a major food manufacturer in the UK, processing mostly pork products. So we kill up to 60,000 pigs a week, and then we take those into further process. So we do that from 2 abattoirs across the country. We've got 12 other production sites, producing anything pork related, from cooked meats to sausages to bacon to anything you can think of. And probably the bits you haven't thought of as well, one of the things we've started doing recently is exporting material to China, and they like what we call the fifth quarter. So we always thought we could sell everything in the pig, but now it seems we can sell a bit more of the pig to China, and they take things like stomachs and all the nasty bits that you wouldn't even think about in here. So that's what we do. We have a business that imports continental meats as well, and we're currently just nearly completed the building of a new pastry factory. So we're going to start making sausage rolls, quiches, pies, that sort of thing, which is not going to do a lot for my figure, but they are very, very nice, and we'll see how that goes. My contact details on there, so I've got my email address. You can send me an email anytime, and my Twitter there. I don't do a lot of tweeting, but I do read Twitter quite a lot, and will respond if anyone does direct message me. I just haven't got many friends at the moment, so that's why I don't do it. Right. So what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm going to do a bit more talking than I planned on doing, because I've broken my laptop, is a sample request system. So this comes from our sales team, are forever asking the NPD team to send samples to customers. So previously, they would send them an email with an Excel spreadsheet attached with the form on it. So we had one Excel form, or we had one alleged Excel form. We probably had 20 different versions of the same Excel form. And they would send that in. There was an email group set up to send it to, but more often than not, they'd send it to one person, and it was up to that person to deal with it and be able to track the sample request throughout, right through to the production of it and into the courier taking it off to the customer or the third party. So we'll talk about that, how we did that, what options we looked at before we decided InfoPath and SharePoint was the way forward, what we decided to go with. I'm going to do a demo, but we might have to crowd round to see it. And I'll talk about the challenges we had and the tips from me personally to make it work. You've got to remember, I'm not a SharePoint expert. I'm the SharePoint guy at our place, and it's a part of my job. It's not all of my job. I do all the other IT manager stuff as well. So hopefully we'll be able to show you something that looks something like. So the issue before, we had the Excel form, or multiple versions of the Excel form. Sometimes they didn't even bother with that. They just sent an email saying, can you send this product to these people? And they would email it to the single person, hoping that they'd pick it up, deal with it. And then they would put it onto a manual Excel-based plan. Everyone loves Excel, and it is a great tool, but it's not the tool to do every job. So they'd manually maintain this plan within Excel with hyperlinks, with VLOOKUP functions, lots of things that would trip them up and cause potential issues. And from there, they created some reports in Excel for when they wanted to say how many samples have we sent to this customer, or how many samples of this product type have we done in the last month or 2 months, whatever they wanted to do. So basically, we had poor visibility or notice of what was going on, and more importantly, what wasn't going on, because that's the bit that annoys people when they've made a request and it hasn't been done because somebody overlooked the email. So before I jumped in with SharePoint, which I do sometimes have a tendency to do, you've got to look at the other options. Is there something else available? These guys had spoken to several software manufacturers who said, yeah, we can do your system like that, and they wanted good money for it. So we had a look at those. Quickly, I decided that for their requirement, SharePoint would do the trick. So then we had to decide whether we needed InfoPath or stick with Excel. We could have quite easily taken the Excel form, made it a content type in SharePoint, allowed them to carry on filling in Excel forms. The downside to that is they wanted to get some of the data out of the form i.e. who the customer was, what the product type was, that sort of thing. And getting it out of an Excel content type isn't as easy as it could be. So, yeah, InfoPath is a solution. It allows us to promote properties from within the form into a SharePoint list and then do all the nice things that we can do in SharePoint lists, such as create views and create reports based on that information. Where to ask ourselves if workflows were required. We've not got any third-party workflow tool at the moment. We've looked at some in the past and we'll look at them again in the future. Excuse me, I'm just going to wander around this way and get some water if that's okay. So we haven't got Nintex, we haven't got K2, we've only got the out-of-the-box stuff. That's not to say we won't be getting those, and certainly it's something I'd like to look at in the future. But for this project, can we do it out of the box, or do we need these third-party solutions? That's the question we had to ask ourselves. So to look at the workflows that they wanted to use and then decide whether we could use those or not. So the proposal was a browser-enabled InfoPath form with workflow to email all the relevant parties. So we had an approval workflow, notification workflow, and then after the approval, we take the item that's been created in the form, complete some further data in the form, and create a calendar entry to create a plan that you can see within the calendars view in SharePoint. We've got one single calendar, every entry goes in there, and then we've got calendar overlays for the team. And we use SharePoint views on the form library for quick access to how many have we done by customer, how many have we done by whatever. And then the final bit of piece of information was some documentation to be created at the end of the sample process. So before it goes to the courier, we need to put a label on the box, sorry. We need to tell the courier what we'd like them to do, create a manifesto for the courier, and they've also recently requested a delivery note as well to be prepared from that. So we decided to let's see how far we get with out of the box. Right. And this is the bit that I can't do. Let's try it one more time. Basically saying I haven't got a driver, just bear with 1 second. Logging on to my VMware. Can't project, try and reinstall. Right. If we can get on the internet here. Can we get on the internet here? My backup plan was always this. So what I'm going to try and do now is connect via UAG into our network and then get on my Office PC and show you my demo site from there. But the internet is shocking.
We've got IT coming right now.
Have we?
Have a look at this.
Super.
So hopefully you might get online. Sure.
That would be great. If we can get online, we can show something. Yeah. And And it's almost the same as what I've been working on today. I thought today I'd do some tidying up and make it look a bit prettier, you know that, and it's all on there. But I'm quite happy if anyone wants to come and look on here, that's fine. I'll come round you all, in fact, and just sit with you. Yeah, one at a time. Well, we'll be done by 5, yeah? Yeah. Has anyone got any questions about how we got to where we got to in regards of should we use InfoPath? We had SharePoint before this, yeah. So we've been using SharePoint since 2007. We've used InfoPath a bit before then. In 2010, InfoPath becomes a lot more integrated, and it's the default editor for any form, for any list or library. So it's there. It makes sense. InfoPath Services is part of SharePoint Enterprise, and there's licenses issues around that. And obviously, InfoPath, if you use it on the desktop, is a separate product, which is why I built it all as browser enabled. So we've been using that. Shall we have a show of hands? How many people here are using SharePoint now, using InfoPath? So that's all SharePoint, obviously. How many are using InfoPath? Right. My stuff might not be that good, you know. I think it solves the problem for us, and that's it. It's not an overly complex solution, but it does solve a problem for us, and that in itself is enough. Oh. Yes, of course you can.
Hopefully we'll get to see you on the form.
Yes.
Is it a form from the form library you use a list form?
I used a form in a form library, and then I promoted lots of properties, yeah. Yes, as columns. Yeah, so we've got a lot of property promotion in there, and the reason I created it as a form library is because generally I'm a bit lazy, and they already had an Excel form, and there's a handy little button when you open InfoPath that says convert form. All right. One of the points later on is never use that button. Yeah, you might think you're being clever, yeah, and it brings it through and it creates a form and it looks something like you expect it to look, but then you've got all these fields called field 1 and field 2 and field 3, and you think, well, I might as well just create the thing in the first place. But by that point, I'd shown him it as a demo and thought, yeah, do that. So I renamed all the columns that it brought with it, and we promoted properties like that. There are some, sorry, I'll come back. There are some fields that are columns within the library rather than property promoted from the form itself. And the reason I've got columns in the library is so that I can use workflow to write back to those columns, because you can't, using SharePoint Design, you can't take the workflow and change a field that's already in an existing. You can. If you take the ID and create an update record, etc., you can do that, but it's much easier. So there's one, as we go through, once somebody's added a sample request and then it's been approved and then they filled in the criteria about who's going to do it, it moves or copies it to the sample plan. When it copies it to the sample plan, it checks a field in the library, not in the form, to say it's been added, so that the next time someone updates it, or it looks and says, no, it's already been done. So we've got some fields that are columns within the library and some fields that are promoted via the... Hey, sorry, you had a question?
Did you do fancy validation? In the past I've used InfoPath in 2007 and I really struggled with bringing in the data sources.
Yep.
So you select an option and it might affect the options going forward.
Yep.
So places in the UK, you can now look for hotels in the UK,
Yep.
not hotels for the entire world.
Right, yep.
For example, so you want to filter based on the previous choices.
So cascading columns, effectively, yeah. I haven't got any cascading columns. I have got some filtered columns. So by default, I take, so if you select a customer, for example, and from the customers list, there's a customer name and there's a delivery address, and we take the customer name and we filter based on that selection and populate the address field within the form. Yeah, so that's quite straightforward. It doesn't look like anything else you've ever done when you edit the XML. The worst thing about this is the laptop that broke over the weekend. I brought it with me anyway, but I left it in the hotel this morning. It's rubbish. It's not working. It's doing 100% disk everywhere. Right. Am I going to need an administrator password if I need to do something in a second? Hopefully not. All right. Let's see if this works. It should. It should. So we do validation on the form. We do filtering on the form. We do a few bits and hiding fields when certain boxes are ticked, that sort of thing. And hiding sections was quite an interesting article I found about an easy way to hide sections within the form. So we're going to have a look at that as well. Is that letting me do anything? I always swear by Hyper-V rather than VMware, but if I'd had VMware, I'd have been up and cooking now, wouldn't I? Cool. We've got another option. That's what it is. Yes. Right, 2 seconds. While we're doing that, we'll look at the form. Sorry? Yeah. I'm feeling relatively stupid now, but I've never had a laptop where the video driver just didn't do anything. I've had it wouldn't do different resolutions and stuff, but I had all that set. I checked that and just didn't think that it wouldn't do it at all. Is that asking me now? Yes. Hopefully I can clean this one. Any more questions while we're just waiting for that to...
How would it go down with business or salesmen on the road, and how did the end user tend to?
They loved it. Yeah. Partly because one of the things, if the internet works in a second, I'm going to show you, is that we can access it externally through any web browser. Yeah, so we've got UAG. There is a slight complication with UAG that 2 weeks ago our UAG guy said, I'll install SP3 because it supports Windows 8 and IE 10, which it does, but then it kills forms in SharePoint. But this is looking good. We'll be able to get to my machine in a second, and we'll be able to do some sort of demo, hopefully, if the internet holds up. Does anybody else use UAG? It's really quite good. This box comes up in a minute here. Right. This is good. This is no code whatsoever, yeah. I'm rubbish at code. It just looks like lots of different coloured lists of lines and stuff. If I really had to, I could work out the logic behind code, but I couldn't write code. I couldn't do it. But it's completely no code. It's using some of the functionality within InfoPath and SharePoint designer workflows, which are not the greatest at all, but they're there, and we can use them and they're free. You know, so what it has done, I'm a bit backwards now in the in the talk, but what it has done is it's given the MPD department who's used this, they've thought, right, well, if we can do that with SharePoint, what about doing this with SharePoint? And at that point, when I say to them, because we've already delivered something successfully, I say, well, yeah, we can do that, but I need to bind in-text and you need to chat someone up. And or K2, I haven't decided yet if there's any of the different guys in the room.
Other workflow vendors are available.
Other workflow vendors are available, but it's hard to see past those two. It is. So this is what the site looks like. There you go. It's a demo done. Yeah. Hopefully this will open this RDP session in a second. That's super. Right. This is my tidying up over the weekend. Oh no, this is live version. In fact, I probably shouldn't do that. Yeah.
Could you order me some bacon? Proper samples to the conference.
Right, that didn't work. That was, this internet is shocking. So no, the reason I closed that down there because if I'd gone into there, you'd have seen lists of customers and lists of products and things, which I don't think any of it's really confidential. You could look in our annual report; it tells you who we sell to. You can't sell £1 billion worth of bacon without someone knowing what you do. But just in case, because by their very nature, sample requests are often something that isn't in the marketplace. So, in my example, internet's died again. I've changed customers to football teams because it seems slightly less. See, this was always my backup plan, because Zoe said to me, she said, you've got internet on the pedestal, eh? So pretend I was doing an Office 365 demo. Would be an even worse situation,
Sorry,
wouldn't
it's
we?
gonna have to chase it.
Shocking. Where's the screen gone? Right.
What problems do you hit with
The main problems were actually more around the workflow interaction than they were around InfoPath. So, and we haven't changed it yet. There's a part about the approval. So, when the sample request gets submitted, it goes to the senior NPD team. One of those will pick it up, and one of them approves it. So it's an out-of-the-box workflow. Sounds great, and it is great. It works. But when it doesn't work, what it does, and it happened quite a lot before I changed the default email to open the form in the browser by default. So it opens in InfoPath, and it appeared that when they then closed InfoPath and approved it, it locked the form. And once the form's locked, then SharePoint says I can't run the workflow because it's locked. I'm waiting until this person's done it. There's loads of stuff on the internet about it. There is even in SharePoint Designer an option before you start your workflow to say, wait for the current item to be unlocked, but it never gets unlocked, whatever you do. So you have to terminate the workflow and sorry?
unlocking workflow.
You could write an unlocking workflow, but it's best not to have a lock in the first place. That's what I figure. And the biggest problem around the locking seems to be, because it's something that it only affects a couple of people, and those people are on different sites. Right? I've never been able to replicate it doing it myself. Oh, right. Let's get on here. SP10 test. return test sites.apd. Right. So here is my plan B. Let me just get InfoPath up. Now we're cooking. Right, we've got a demo.
Around the world.
Thank you. Shouldn't have needed to happen. So, sorry, on this version it's a bit narrow and you can see everything. But so starting at the top, we've got a sample request number that happens on form submit. So if someone submits a form, it checks the sample request number field. By default, that's blank. It's a read-only field, so no one can enter something in. When they do enter, when they submit, it goes off. It queries the existing list and says, what's the maximum ID? And then it says, set the sample request field on this to the maximum ID plus 10,001 to give us a next field. Yeah. It's annoying that SharePoint has an ID, and it's rubbish. Yeah, so we have to amend it a bit. So when it submits an existing one, it says, if the sample request number is not blank, ignore it. Yeah. We've got a couple of, no, just got one rule on form load. There is a status field. This is for the redone approval, which is going to be done within the form now. And that, just as you open the form, sets a checkbox back to blank. So from here, people come in, they can see the form, the design. So design here, we've got an example of rules hiding fields. So if you tick the checkbox saying use alternate delivery address, it will hide the actual delivery address that we pulled from the customer name, and they can enter one in manually. Because often we might have a customer, Matt Benson, with his delivery address, but this sample, although it's for them, is going to their third-party PR company, design company. They're going to take some pictures of it or whatever. And then further down, don't worry about, I'll go through the form in a minute, we'll add an example. So this is my new approval section, the first part of which, I can click on the section. So if a sample request number is blank, it's only been opened the once and they haven't submitted it yet, we're going to hide this section here completely so no one sees it. The way that works is there is a list in the SharePoint site called hide approval, because I'm clever with names like that, you see. Yeah. And you can't see anything. The reason you can't see anything there is there is, I don't know, there should be two entries in there, one that says hide and show, the people who've got permission, so item level permissions on that field. So if they've got permission and it says they can see the word show when it returns into InfoPath in the hide show field. Yeah. Let's go back to the section. Click on that. So rule 1. So hide show. If it doesn't equal show, so I log on as me as an administrator, I should see the word show. They log on, they haven't got permission to see the word show, so the first word that comes up for them is hide. So therefore, because of that, we can hide the whole section there. So the whole approval section, this bit from here to here, gets hidden by that rule. Yeah. They can then change the status. Status is default to received, and when they change that status from received, it disables that to stop them accidentally tabbing down or pressing a down arrow that would change the status, and they can unlock that by the rule on this button here, which then says set that back to received, which means it's not on, not locked.
Are they changing the status manually?
Sorry?
Are they changing the status themselves?
Only the people who are allowed to approve can change the status, yeah. So they're changing the status manually between the approval options. So it's basically approve, reject, request more information.
Why do they change the status when the person approves instead of allowing them to change?
Why are they changing it when they press approve?
Yeah.
So they are doing that at the moment in the out-of-the-box workflow, yeah, but the out-of-the-box workflow is causing locking on the form when they go to the approval form. Yeah, so the approval form, which opens up from the standard out-of-the-box workflow, locks the form. Right? So very occasionally they'll ring me up and say, it hasn't moved to the sample plan, and it's always the same people, well, the same person actually, and but I think this will just be a bit easier. What it also means is that from the email that I generate kicking off the approval, excuse me, I'm just going to get some more water again, they can open the form, they can do the approval within the form. They don't have to go back to the email and open the approval task, as is the default. I'll take the jug. So it's just another way around doing it. I'm not saying it's the best way, I'm not saying it's super clever, but it is a way around a problem that we've seen, and that's my job, so do that. Have I got any more? In my haste to create the demo. There we go. Right. So the other thing we've got within the form itself is the views. So we've got the default view. These will look better when we look at the form in a minute. The box label, which looks a bit rubbish, right? It's an exact replica of the box label they had before, and I was like, I can do that, yeah, but I want to make it, no, keep it as it is. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone does it. The example on there is slightly better. Delivery note, they asked for that last week, and I've just done it this morning actually. So if anyone does want to see the delivery note, we can look at it on there. And then there's a print view, which, again, my current version just narrows it down a bit. Printing forms from InfoPath is rubbish. Yeah, really, really rubbish. Yeah, you don't want to do it. Yeah, and that's something I say to people. And there are form solutions out there. Other people selling forms. There's code on the internet to create a button on your form, to press a button to print it, and it'll do it. But it's still not great. Yeah. So, well, Microsoft will argue, well, you're using online forms because you want online forms, because get rid of the paper that you had before. So why do you want to print it out? But sometimes people want to print it out to do whatever. So printing is not great. Okay. So let's go have a look at our sample requests. So, if we had a sample request and wake everything up, this takes a couple of seconds. Well, that's just doing that. We'll just go through the other. So the list, guess the right site. The list that we've got, these are all the data connections that we've got going into the form. So we've got our business units there, our customers, the couriers that we use, although now they seem to just use one courier. The sample plan is the calendar that we're going to see in a second. The MPD team, so when they're allocating people, they can use that. Not all of those people have AD accounts, so it was just as easy just to create a list of people, and the MPD managing that. And then these next four are just analysis fields, so they can then use views to say how many different ones of a particular product type have we done within there. So we've got a form open here. We'll fill it in. Little bits there. Mandatory fields. So you see there from the selection of the customer, that's filled in their delivery address. And if we select Barcelona, we can put the correct delivery address in by ticking that box. And that works remarkably neatly for the solution. They need to say who they're going to invoice it to and who they're going to invoice the courier to as well. Those can always all be different people. It might be the invoice, the business unit itself, rather than anyone in particular. We're always going to need to know who it's sent for. We can put a contact number in there if you want. That's not my phone number. And the last piece of mandatory information before they enter any products is when do you want it. So the salesperson would do that. They would fill in this box for the product and enter any references they might have. All these things come from a really old form, and I keep saying no one ever fills in any. Yeah, but they might do. You know? So we keep the reference number field there just because they might do, apparently. And and say how many they want. And there's the, so that's a demo of validation, yeah. Just because we have to give it a reason. And that will submit the form there. So, I haven't done a lot on this, on my thing here. So if we look at the workflows behind that, and for demo purposes, I've stopped any of the workflows running automatically. Just see, okay. Where's my bloody thing? Yeah. So the first workflow is the sample request approval. So that goes off. It's by default, because it's an approval workflow out of the box, it will send an email to the person who's entered the form saying, we've got your record. And it will then send an email. In this case, it sends an email to a group of people saying, can you approve it? And then we've modified the approval so that it's accepted on first approval. Yeah. So only one person need approve it. Obviously, this happens automatically normally, so we never see this thing. And this is my backup server, otherwise known as test. That would do that one. Let's see if I can get SharePoint Designer up as well. So look at that. So we can have a look at the workflows in a second. How do you have time? Is that doing that? Just thinking about it. So we can have a look at that workflow there. So this is just, it looks really simple there because it's an out-of-the-box one, but for anyone who's not aware, you can customise the out-of-the-box workflows slightly as well if you would like. So one of the things we did to customise it, or I did to customise it, was create this variable form link, and the variable form link is something that I stole off Laura Rogers, I think it was, to create a hyperlink that you can put into your email rather than it open the form in InfoPath. Yeah, so I basically just changed the end there. Let's have a look. We can have a look at what that does. So basically, you copy all that text from Laura's website, amend it to your bits and pieces, and it forces it to open in the browser, which is nice because when they open it in InfoPath, it's all a bit slower, and they might not have InfoPath installed, and do that. So hopefully that's now done that. So that will have created a task for someone to go and approve it. I've come onto my machine at the office. I could show you the emails because they weren't on there. But we'll approve that task there. So once someone has approved the item, usually it's the same person who's approving it who then allocates the MPD bit. So this is one of the reasons the approval within the form works quite nicely, because they can do the two things at the same time. So they will come down and they will select who's going to do it, when they're going to do it, what time they should start, how long it might take. Let's just go back across a bit. And then that uses a calculation to calculate the finish time as well. Now, unfortunately, these times, the start time and the finish time, are stored as time and date in InfoPath. So when I promote those into SharePoint library, I use a calculated column to take the time bit out and add it to the date to be done field to get the start time and the finish time to then apply to the calendar in a minute. Yeah, so it looks like just a time field, but it comes through as 1st of Jan 1980 or whatever the default date is there. So they will fill that in. They can fill in these analysis fields if they want, but they're not mandatory. And they will submit the form. So now it's approved and we've got somebody to do it. and we know who the customer is, we can kick off the next workflow, because those are the conditions on the workflow. Add to sample plan. Here, so we can see, so that it has to have not been added to the plan before. The approval equals 16, which is the internal ID of that, and the current team member is not empty, and they've put a date in as well. And one of the things I found when doing this, then all the fields that do that, when you take a field, so in the plan we include these analysis fields so they can look at either the plan or the library for the analysis. But when you move those across and copy the item, you have to use the ID rather than the field name. So you need to make sure you promote the ID of the field as well as the name, because by default you say select sausages for the product group, and then the form knows it's called sausages, but it doesn't know what the ID of the field is. So that's it. An example there. So if we run this workflow, which generally runs a bit quicker than the next one, that was the one, wasn't it? Maybe this one has started. Let's go back. Let's go back to that. So requests. Workflows. Let's just terminate that one. This was something I was playing with, as you can tell from the name on the workflow there. Add sample flow. Said I haven't got access to the sample flow. Fantastic. Right. Right. So that takes an item from the form library, creates an item in the calendar, which doesn't like the fact that I copied it across from my demo machine. Has everyone seen calendar overlays in SharePoint? Yeah, so you get the idea there that it, because of the person, we use views and then overlay the calendar, and then they can go in and see that. So they ones I created earlier, it's pulled through the start date, the finish date. The title, that's another calculated field from the form library as well, so that gives them some relevant information rather than just a number. They can see who the customer is and what the product type is as well as they do that. Plan, left ideas, update plan. The final workflow that can work, but as it's decided it doesn't like me, it might not. They can amend the plan as well from within the form. So if I say, no, he's not going to do it, Jan's going to do it instead, there is a workflow. I'm sure you all believe me, that says, it's called update plan, and it goes on, finds the item with the same sample request number, and then updates all the fields within that, that plan. So you can move people around within the form as well as within the thing. There's no write back in our solution from the plan to the form itself, but that's not to say there couldn't be. It's just that they decided once something's been submitted, then it's submitted, and only they might change little bits inside it. So we've shown views, haven't we? I did views in the form to start with. That's probably keep that. Right. So the final thing, which is working out quite nice, is a report. Anyone who's done SSRS, or particularly SSRS against SharePoint data, takes ages to load, but it is doing it. So this is a SQL Server reporting services report. At the moment, it's got some default dates on for today, and this is what they've sent to the courier once they've put all the samples together and they filled in the final section on the form. That one doesn't like me at all, does it? Which is just about the courier. Looks like my test server's running really quickly today, and everyone's just quick, so that is a bit of luck. They come down here and they can enter who the courier is, what the PO number is if they've created one, how much the courier is going to cost, and the date of dispatch, and the product state to say whether it's chilled or frozen that's required, and the number of boxes. And the site and all of those things will then magically appear on there when it doesn't say error. I don't know what that error is. If anyone would like to see an example of the report, come and see me after. But it's an SSRS report that creates that and does that. They love it. It's saving them a lot of time. So before I go back to the presentation side of things, is there anything there on the demo side that anyone's got any questions about?
Just your SSRS report, you connect into your forms library.
Yes. Yeah, so just
So what are you doing? What are you bringing out the latest? Is your report supposed to give you the latest? Or
absolutely, yeah, it'll do it. If we create one now and then run the report, it'll be there.
you don't pass parameters into it?
We pass parameters into it, yep. So the parameters on the report, let's see if I can get that up. Basically, the date and it's not there. If you want to see that, you can come and see me after on here. But yeah, it pulls basically the date and the courier that's going to be used. So it produces one report per courier.
In your forms, don't you have the problem where if you click on add new, automatically creates a form? So what if you wanted to cancel it? You just have to delete it.
If you want to cancel it, we have a field within the form that says the workflows that the request has been cancelled. Yeah, so you can change. There's another drop down at the end near the status that says it's either been completed or it's been cancelled. So if they cancel it, then everyone gets an email saying we're not doing this anymore, and it disappears from all the views.
What you to use forms library instead of list?
Forms library instead of a list. As I said before, it was a lazy thing because we already had a form. Yeah, and the other reason is because the forms library allows you to have one form, multiple products. Yeah. So you have the repeating table, so they can add up to about 30 products within the form, which isn't so easy if you use a list, because then you've got to say product 1, column product 1, 2, column. Yeah. So that was the main reason to include the repeating table. Yeah. Super. Demo done. So I've probably covered off most of these. So with the out-of-the-box approval restricting the locking of the form, they're not opening in the browser. And then one final one, the initial approval email is confusing. So I don't know if anyone's seen this, but if you reject an out-of-the-box workflow, the email that the person who's put it in gets says in the title, approval has completed. And then about 6 lines down in the email it says, and it was rejected. So some people rightly, depending on how pedantic I'm feeling when they complain about that, say, it says it was accepted and it's all finished and now they're telling me they haven't done it. And I said,
But you can change, you don't have to accept that.
sorry?
You can, can't you?
Yeah, you can change it. Yeah, you can change it. Yeah, I'm just,
Be what
yeah.
you wanted to.
it can be whatever you want it to be. Yeah, but what you want it to be is not the out-of-the-box approval workflow and do something else, because it's just, it's there, it does what it says on the tin. As soon as you want to move away from that, it's not great. But yes, you can change that email in the same way that I changed the email to open the form in the browser. Yeah, which was another one. Changes to the template. I'm still not 100% sure why, but once I changed the template, uploaded it, and a couple of the previous forms that had been created with an earlier version of the template wouldn't open. So you just need to be wary of that. And now when I make significant changes, I could give it a new template name, which means that those changes won't be adopted by the earlier forms that have previously been added, but they will still open. So there's no need to update those earlier forms, because if it was informational, then it wasn't there then. So you've got to be wary of that one. There is a limit to the number of items that you can add into the repeating table. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure what it is. I just know pre-Christmas someone put in 50 items, which is a bloody big sample request. I think they were putting a sales order on more than a sample. And then rang me up and said, I've just done this and it's not worked. And I said, well, it's sample requests. Yeah. Printing reviews, we've said that. That's an annoyance. And I think if you were always going to print your forms, then you probably want to look at a different solution for your forms. The initial request from the team didn't include everything, as ever. They say, we just need it to do this, and then they come back and say, and now it just needs to do this, and now it just needs to do this. So that was a challenge, but that's part of the fun of it. And finally, getting the workflows to update fields. As I said before, sometimes you need to use a column within the library rather than a property within the form itself, if you want to change that. So, time saved. So I asked our MPD manager last week, I said, what have you saved in terms of time? And these were her real numbers, they weren't mine that I made up. She said, so the login requests, 40% reduction in time. Even one of our most, delicately put it, stalwart salespeople who doesn't even send an email, he sits here and his PA sits here and he dictates the email from her. He loves it. So they were really went for that. So 40% reduction in that. Booking the transport, they've saved 50% of the time. Signing off purchase orders, an incredible 75% of the time, because they can just find the purchase order by looking on SharePoint and seeing which order that was and working it out. But two of the biggest wins, there's nothing missing. If it got entered, we've still got it. We know about it, and there's no duplicates. So the people are just doing the work that they're there to do. So the outcome is that the users are very happy, more happy than I would have been with this solution, because to me it's quite straightforward, but to them they've gone, wow, it's great, we love it. So they've created 1,000 documents in the first 6 months. They're estimating an hour per request overall with all the bits and pieces and different people, which equates to one person. You're basically saving a person 6 months' work in that 6 months that we've done that with very little outlay. So tips to make it work. Fortunately, as predicted, the previous Excel sheet broke, and this was about middle of November. Christmas is our busiest time. They're sending samples out everywhere. We'd started the development on it. It was there as a proof of concept, and they said, can we start using it? And I said, yeah, on the proviso that we're not quite finished, but that was great. Yeah, it was a bit painful for a couple of days when it don't do this, it don't do this, but it got them using it. And I think without that, they may have struggled that first step. But once they made that first step, then they were great. They came back, they gave me feedback. We created a list within the SharePoint site itself, so they could add tasks for me to do and bits and that they wanted to be changing. Be open to that change, because it's their product. Yeah, I'm not using it. I don't use it on a day-to-day basis. I've used it over the weekend as I've been preparing my demo, and I've tweaked quite a lot of it, because I think, well, that could just be a little bit better, and that could just be a little bit better as a user. But at the end of the day, if they say, we want that box moving there, let them have that box there. Yeah, there's some quick wins that you can show them by doing that sort of thing, and people respond well to your adaptive approach to that. But you've got to be honest and manage expectation, and so without spending some money, it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to do everything. And if you manage that expectation, then that's the expectation they've got, and they'll take it on and say, yeah, we're happy with it. So what's next for us? This has already been adopted by another business unit. So the people that are doing it now are our fresh pot people. They do sausages and bacon. Our convenience division do cooked meats. They've taken it on. They didn't want the approval bit, so they've just got a form and workflows telling people that it's going there. 2 more business units are going to take it live. We're going to change the approval processes, as I earlier discussed. I am going to improve the views for printing, because it seems they want to print stuff. And I'm going to link it into, we use Dynamics NAV as our back office. So I'm going to link it into there so that creating the sample request can create the PO and talk to the PO, and then we'll be able to pass data between the two. We're going to enhance the reporting, and we are going to look at a third-party workflow, but I've put that on there. It's not really part of the sample request. This system works fine without a third-party workflow. But as I said earlier on, what it has done is then say to them, well, if we could do this, at which point, going back a slide, I've managed their expectation and said we won't do that with the out-the-box workflow. Yeah, so that's around new product setup and approval of the new product, approval of new raw materials, and lots of workflows branching off in different places. So we're definitely not going to do that without the box.
So the thing though, that third-party workflow will actually save your time rather than their time. I mean, because obviously the users don't see what happens behind the scenes.
No, true.
You're the one who has to spend a lot of time trying to include everything on the form, edit
Yep.
new rules on the form. But if you had a workflow, most of the stuff you can do it on the workflow. Like you could create your reference ID on the workflow without having to check on the form and do everything. You know what I mean?
You could indeed. But saving my time is as important as saving their time sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. There are limitations. Any Microsoft guy in the house will tell you there are limitations to the out-of-the-box thing. I don't know if you've ever seen the Nintex. This is what Microsoft out-of-the-box workflow does, and this is what our workflow does. Yeah, this is an opportunity to put a business case together for a third-party workflow solution. That won't just be used for this, it'll be used for lots of things. Yeah, so it's just one of a building block. But yes, it will save me some time, and then I can work 50 hours a week instead of 70. That'll be good. Right, so that's me done. Thank you very much for your patience in my failure to be able to display my VM. Hopefully you got an idea of that from the backup solution. And if you've got any questions, I'll be about for a bit at the end, or my contact details on the first slide.